I can't even understand what that means.
Today on Faith on Tap, let's talk about the hot-button issue of immigration. What about America's immigration policy would lead to people feeling the need to cross the border illegally?
I don't think it's wrong to bring people into our country who are in need. There is a process for such entry into the country, and so to follow that process is the law. If we want something different, we can change the law. To just allow a flooding of people to come over willy-nilly is dangerous.
As citizens of the United States, what kind of expectations should we have in place for those committing to come here legally?
If you're going to become a citizen in the United States, you should have some semblance of understanding the language, being able to speak it, understanding life in America, not creating your own country. But also, I think part of the beauty of America is we encourage you to become American, but yet within that, we encourage you to also hold on to your cultural traditions.
As Christians living in America, what should our position be, and how should our hearts be aligned to take on this topic seriously and in the light of Christ?
Well, I think as Christians, we need to focus in-house first, put our house in order, meaning our country. We have veterans that are homeless. We have a VA system that needs help. It needs work. And so we want to be the Messiah of the world, and yet within our own borders, our own people are suffering, and they don't have to be.
Thoughts on these questions and so much more today on Faith on Tap. We are at Black Hog Brewery in, is it Oxford?
Oxford, Connecticut.
One of these mega breweries normally, but 4/5 of it is closed down during construction. So we have it's a very strange atmosphere, right? Dennis, to you describe what you ate and anything else you have to say.
The temperature would come up if you had the chicken parm sandwich.
And also a psychosis.
Well, that helps too, which I thoroughly enjoyed. The chicken parm sandwich from the food truck, Feeling Saucy pasta truck. It was delicious. Dark meat chicken, no breading, just sauce and cheese it was delish.
Yeah.
A lot of garlic pesto on it though. Probably
Yeah,
be sleeping on the
good.
couch tonight.
Had a half a clove of garlic, and that was too much for him. I had a meatball slider, and the meatball is not plural. It was a single meatball. It was tasty. Yeah, what I tasted of it. And what do you have, Liz?
I had a bow tie salad, which was so good. If you go to Feeling Saucy Pasta Truck, that's a solid recommendation.
Yeah, it was good. And what's also good is a question we're going to be asking. In our theme of Dennis-inspired political questions, we are going with immigration status. What was people's thoughts on it? Dennis will talk about why he wanted to do the immigration question.
Well, again, it's just a current event that is kind of a hot button topic right now. We have a present administration that's cleaning house. Interested to hear what some people's thoughts are on it.
And the Christian perspective, I guess we'll see if there is any from the people. You even touched that. A lot of people might be asking that question.
Yeah, most people seem to avoid it.
I'm expecting a lot of avoidance, to be honest with you. Not a lot of strong opinions because they don't want to offend people.
I'm not sure I agree with you. I think people will have strong thoughts, but they might be hesitant to offer them because they think they're going to be famous on our podcast.
Well, maybe they will. They would only give their first name. So I hope it doesn't shut down conversation. And if it does, that's an interesting dynamic. Breweries, like, you're afraid to talk about your opinion.
They're not bars, they're breweries, and it's a little bit different time. But we will see. Let's give it a shot. Let's go to the guest now.
What do you think about the recent changes in the number of people crossing the southern border without legal permission?
I think it's just like any other law, right? It's just like something we have to, if we're going to make a law, we got to keep it, like, abide by it, right? Mm-hmm. If it's something that we want to be looser on, then I think as a country, we need to decide that. And it's obviously affecting our economy and affecting our political area. So just like anything else, we got to do the right thing and have some empathy for people that are trying to do the right thing, but there's a pathway for them. And
Right.
well, it's a continuous changing climate, I think.
What would you consider the right thing?
The right thing for me and the right thing for somebody else might be different, right? But again, I think if like the majority population has agreed on a specific law, let's follow that, right? And if there's parameters to give people opportunity, then let's follow that too. And if there's, the majority says, hey, let's change something that we agreed on 50 years ago, let's do that. We need to evolve with the times, but we need to stick to the law.
So if we want the law to change, then change the law.
Yes.
But don't break the law.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings about the ethnic value and or the moral value of deportations?
I don't think it's like an ethnic thing. I don't think it's a moral thing. Again, I think it's right or wrong, right? It's like just like anybody else. If you didn't do the right thing, then you should pay the consequence, right? And I think, for some people it's jail, for other people it's deportation, for other people it's you get your kids taken away. So I think it's just like anything else. You rolled the dice, you got caught, pay the consequence.
So you see it as a very objective type of thing. It's here it is.
Yes or no. Yeah. You should have compassion to do things and have empathy for people, right? But again, there's like this very clear, we either follow the rules or we don't, right? And there's certain circumstance for everything, but for the majority, right? If you're looking at very like broad brush, they're doing the right thing or they're not, right? And then case by case, you could get bogged down into the minutia of that stuff. But over very broad brush, it's easy. For me, when I look at it over the general public, which sometimes you have to do from 30,000 feet,
right,
it's easier to make the decision when it's either right or wrong.
How do you balance as a president of a company the different opinions on just the things we've talked about, say the immigration?
It's tough, right? Because there's personal opinion and then there is like, company bylaws and rules, right? The two shouldn't mix, but they do, right? Because people are human. It's hard for them to change right when they walk in the door. We want to have an open environment. We want to have a place where people feel like they could voice their opinion. But at the end of the day, we try to have a place of inclusion. We try not to make decisions in a bubble, right? We try to make sure people have a voice. But at the end of the day, we try to do things by majority, right? Not what I do, not what this person does, but what's the best for the company, what's the best for the employees. And typically we take that view. It's typically more of a conservative view overall, right? In our company, the headquarters is in New York, very, very liberal state, but behind closed doors, when people aren't being measured, it typically leans to conservative.
And so you maintain those conservative values throughout.
We try to,
yeah,
while listening to the general public, because we want to evolve with it as things change, and we want to be a good employer and we want to be a good partner, but we also want to be a grounding rod for people too, and be able to have adult conversations. Say, hey,
right. Sean, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to take up more for you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
What do you think about the recent changes in the number of people crossing the southern border without legal permission? And how do you feel about the fairness of deporting those who enter the country without legal permission?
I understand why people come here. I think they should be treated as humanely as possible. Whatever we can do in their home countries to keep them from having to have to leave, I think is much more important than a lot of people realize. Just building the wall is not going to keep people out. If the conditions are so abhorrent in their home country that they literally cannot live there, then they've got to go somewhere else. And think how horrible it must be to pack up your family, your kids, right, and walk literally 1,000 miles with your, meager belongings on your back. So, things must be really, really, really bad, right? It's not really answering the question, but I think we need to address these things in their home countries. And unfortunately, we become more America first, let's help ourselves first. And then I don't think people realize the end results of this type of trend of policy.
So there's clearly a dichotomy in the United States of people, falling clearly on one side or another. Why do you think there's such a divide at this point?
To start a dictatorship or, to become a fascist, you need an enemy. That's how the fascists started in Europe, pre-World War II. First you have to find someone to blame. Okay, in that case, they use the Jews. In this case, they're using the migrants. And you blame all society's ills on these people. So once you've got someone to blame, then you just get all the people who either may not be educated enough or don't want to be educated enough to know what's actually going on.
Okay.
So you get everyone to hate them. And then once we get rid of them, all our problems will be done. And I feel that our president has done a very good job of that.
If you had the president's ear, what would you like to offer as some thoughtful ways to, you said, working with the other countries to make them more comfortable for the people to stay? What would you offer as thought? And let's say he was willing to hear you out. And
money and support are obviously the two most important things.
Okay.
And let's stop trying to influence their elections and assassinating their leaders.
Okay.
The U.S. has a long history of badly messing at other people's affairs and then wondering why people hate us 50 years later.
Okay, so Nathaniel,
what
do you think about the recent changes in the number of people crossing the southern border without legal permission, and how do you feel about the fairness of deporting those who enter the country without legal permission?
Well, for the changes, I think part of it is like some people do, but a lot of people when they come to the United States, like they already know someone that's there or whatever. So I think like the numbers have gone down recently, mostly because like the United States like very publicly has made the perception of it that it's not a country that's welcome to migrants. So I think that can explain some of the decreases in like border crossings and stuff like that.
Okay.
Also, COVID's not as bad as it was. There's less people immigrating that way. It's probably more pros for certain people than other people. A lot of people talk about like immigrants taking your jobs, which can happen in certain circumstances, but they don't necessarily always compete for the same types of jobs. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because we probably shouldn't be relying on people coming, across the world to like pick strawberries and like build houses and stuff like that.
Sure.
But it really does seem to be the case, which probably isn't great, that Americans don't really want to do those jobs. I think the thing to do isn't like, if they're committing crimes or stuff like that, send them back. But the thing to do really is to look at companies, especially in construction, where you have several layers of contracting and subcontracting, people who are, intentionally hiring immigrants that don't have work authorization. And nobody really seems to care about that. Are you familiar with E-Verify?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I would rather the Trump administration, if this is going to be their goal, go more after, big construction companies and especially the subcontractors and implement E-Verify than try to track down every single person that's in the country illegally and send them back. I think that would probably be a better way to go about it. Because when you immigrate illegally, you can get screwed really easily. You can get screwed by, coyotes or whatever, getting you across, become in debt to them.
True.
You complain about your boss. This happened in San Francisco. It's happened in other places. They fire you. They threaten to call ICE on you if you complain about the conditions and stuff like that.
Right.
It's not very easy just to come legally. It takes a while.
Are you suggesting like if you make that system more transparent and less bogged down, then you might not have the problem?
We got to make it quicker too, because people,
Yes, sir.
they get a hearing, they wait a month for a hearing, especially if it's like an asylum hearing or whatever.
Yeah.
They can stay in the United States and then, they say, oh, no, you can't get asylum. But, person had a hearing in Louisiana, they're already in Washington or something. Like, you're not finding that guy.
Very
Those are my
interesting.
thoughts on it.
I love it. Thank you.
We're back. We have Liz on my right-hand side. What's new?
Oh, I've decided to take up time travel. Yesterday I went to tomorrow, but I won't tell you about what happens because spoilers.
Wait. Let me process that for a second. Oh, okay. I get it.
And that was the voice of the Captain of Conviction.
Ooh, I don't like it.
Good. Well, I was batting too high. I needed a strikeout once in a while.
Captain of Conviction. No, that makes me sound like a Pharisee.
Speaking of striking out, did I have a horrible time at the brewery? I was forced to go to older people because my wife told me to.
That's
and
right, man.
I was trying to be obedient, and the Holy Spirit was leading me in a
They were
different
so
direction.
much older.
I go up there, and they said, "No, we don't want to talk." No, that was it. Sorry. So after being rejected from them, Dennis told me to go to the couple behind them that had the baby. No, we don't want to talk.
Well, the fact that you pushed their 4-year-old daughter out of the way.
It gave me a dirty look. Play with fire, you get burned, I was living vicariously through very successful interviews with both Dennis and Liz. So what do you think about the recent changes in the number of people crossing the southern border without legal permission? How do you feel about the fairness of deporting those who enter the country illegally?
Well, you wanted something that was unbiased and not leading a person in either direction.
Right. And
you're welcome.
They did fall asleep during reading them, but they interviewed very well. We had Michael, refresh your memory. He felt we should help their country out before building a wall. Then his son, Nathaniel, said right off the bat, if they did a crime, send them back.
Mm-hmm. Which they all did.
He mentioned about going after the companies that hire the illegals, like construction companies, et cetera, and go right into them and work with that, which is an interesting idea.
I thought his take was it was enlightened in so many ways, and it was very refreshing talking to him.
Sean was the interview that you had, Dennis, and he basically stated it's a law, so you need to enforce it.
Yeah. And what I liked about his response was it's a law, we have to enforce it. And if we want something different, change the law.
Right.
And so it was, your argument is we can change laws if we all agree.
Right.
And there's a consensus. So, well, he's a president of a company, so you have to be pretty on track, I would think.
As Christians, I think this issue, I can see the other side of the issue. I think all of us here would probably share the same viewpoint. I want to play a little bit of a devil's advocate, seeing that there is a legitimate Christian side to the illegal immigration stance. I did appreciate what they had to say, and some diverse opinions. They all had something a little different to say. I guess the question that I would have, why is it wrong to bring a less fortunate person into America, the land of opportunity?
As an American or as a Christian?
As Liz.
As Liz.
Well, it's a very vague statement.
And then that's why I want you to add the nuance to it.
I don't think it's wrong to bring people into our country who are in need. There is a process for such entry into the country. And so to follow that process is the law. If we want something different, we can change the law. To just allow a flooding of people to come over willy-nilly is dangerous.
So if the law was changed where anyone who's anyone just come on in, you would be 100% in favor of that?
No, but it would no longer become illegal.
Right, but you still wouldn't be in favor of it. Why would that be?
There's no country without borders, and I think an open border is dangerous in the context of bad people coming in with the intent to do bad things.
So in Scripture, as Christians, we're trying to find the Christian perspective. And the first thing I'm drawn to is the parable of the Good Samaritan, where we have someone who is an outsider helping someone who is not their countryman. Would that message then be, why shouldn't we help everyone? And in fact, in terms of people coming over the border, shouldn't we help them as a believer of Jesus?
Boy, wouldn't that be nice if we can just help everyone? But the reality is, the more we water down the resources by using them in the wrong way or not stewarding them correctly, the less help we actually offer to people. We have a process of how can we help people in the best way possible. Is it the best way possible? Probably not, but nothing is perfect. But we do have a procedure for helping people, recognizing people are in need, recognizing that they do need help, but we just can't offer everything to everyone at the same time.
Riddle me this then.
Bad man.
How could you have the love of Jesus in your heart as a Christian, not as someone who's working for the government, but you, Dennis? How could you have the love of Jesus in your heart and then turn down people that are in need?
Personally, I usually don't turn down people that are in need.
Then if you're at the border, you'd be telling them to come on over.
That's a little different. One of the things that I try to bring up to people when they are in favor of the open border is, most people I have talked to, they're in favor of the open border when it doesn't really affect them. I say, well, do you have doors on your home? Well, yes. Okay. Do you have locks on the doors? Yes. Do you lock those doors when you're going to sleep at night and or leaving your home? Well, yes. Why? Because you don't want somebody illegally coming into your home, using your resources, whether they're in need or not, and then leaving. So if you're going to be consistent in your ideology or philosophy of migrants, then what are you doing then to serve that higher purpose that you're supporting everybody else doing, that you have no actual skin in the game?
As an American, everything that Dennis says, we have laws. We already have a structure and a system set up. And unfortunately, it is bogged down. And I think even Nathaniel was talking about it, that the process is very mucky. And I 100% agree with him with that. And it needs to be stripped out and redone so that people who want to come here sincerely because they understand America as concept and want to come here and appreciate being here and can eventually offer something back, that's good. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a way to make that happen. And I 100% agree with Nathaniel on that concept. Absolutely. And I that was a really refreshing point. If we want to talk about scripture, there are some thoughts on that too, but I don't know if we want to get there yet.
Oh, you can get there if you want.
Okay. Well, it's just that the Bible seems to have a couple of different ways to talk about people who are coming to your land. There's the sojourners, the people that are just kind of in and out, basically the business people, the travelers, the people who are just moving from one place to another, and your land is kind of in between. It says just be kind to them and treat them with respect, and then they move along and everyone's good. And then there's the people who want to actually immigrate. And there's actually some really interesting stuff in, I think it's Leviticus and Exodus, about people coming into the land that if they're going to stay in the land of Israel, and this is not just like in any country, this is applying specifically to Israel, they have to understand these are the rules and you don't get to not do them. And your family will not be considered true citizens until your family's been here 10 generations and you've assimilated yourselves. It's not you come here and make your own little mini nation in the middle of our nation. This was for Israel. This wasn't for any other country. Israel is the only country that has been God ordained. Mm-hmm. And so that's who these immigration rules were for the people who came into Israel. And that's an interesting concept. America definitely does not ascribe to that at all. I don't think you'd find too many Americans who would even say anything close to that. But it's an interesting thought. As many times people like to think the United States is a Christian nation, I think we fall far short from that idea. And then there's the people who are just coming in as invaders. And those are the people, if they're coming in here with twisted ideals, completely anathema to, and this was again for Israel, what Israel had, they should be completely excised, removed entirely with no remnants at all. Again, this was not for everyone. This was for Israel. So that's my 2 bits on that.
So by extension, as Christians living in America, should we follow similar procedures?
I don't think it's wrong to look to those ideas, but we cannot start thinking that we are a sovereign nation in the way that Israel was. In God only gave those rules to Israel. There's a lot of, because they were God's rules, of course, there's goodness in them, but not every country is expected to be that.
Those are good principles, though. I mean, yeah. If you're going to become a citizen in the United States, you should have some semblance of understanding the language, being able to speak it, understanding life in America, not creating your own country. But also, I think part of America, part of the beauty of America is we encourage you to become American, but yet within that, we encourage you to also hold on to your cultural traditions and things like that.
Yes, but there's
context
this
of
right. And as long as they're not usurping that, because there's actually a place where some town was being bought out completely by a Muslim community, and they wanted to
Michigan, someplace in Michigan.
I don't remember what it was.
Dearborn, Michigan.
No, I don't think it was Dearborn, but their entire plan was to implement in their town, have it a closed community, no one but them, and that they would have Sharia law. But the governor has some rights to make sure that that does not happen, because you don't get to build a little mini country in the middle of America like that. You just don't.
Well, let me interject in get the broader picture. When you're developing your views on illegal immigration, do you think your views are based more from your heart or from your head That's
interesting. Years ago, when we used to listen to NPR, and there was the show This American Life, they had a whole show on how this fellow from, I can't remember which country in Africa, was trying to emigrate to the United States. And he was doing all this rigmarole trying to get through, and he just couldn't. The story was designed to show how difficult the American immigration system is, and also to pull on your heartstrings, because they kept interviewing him and his family and what he planned on doing and how beautiful. I mean, years later, he ended up being able to emigrate to Maine, and I think he became a postal server. He came over with good intentions, did great things, and so maybe they should have made it easier.
When I asked you about the head and the heart, why are you mentioning it?
See, when I listened to that story from NPR, it was definitely designed to pull in your heartstrings, and it's hard not to, because you hear this hard luck story of someone who's trying his best to be the best human. It's like, it's a bit of a sob story. But I think over the years, I've leaned into more being thoughtful about it and wanting to maintain the integrity of the United States as its own entity, and not having it become just all these little mini countries.
I'm a big fan of Thomas Sowell, who's an economist, almost philosopher. And something he said a long time ago just stuck with me. When I was an undergraduate studying economics under Professor Arthur Smith of Harvard. He asked me in class one day what policy I favored on a particular issue at that time. Since I had strong feelings on that issue, I proceeded to answer him with enthusiasm, explaining what beneficial consequences I expected from the policy that I advocated. And then what happened, he asked. The question caught me off guard. However, as I thought about it, it became clear that the situation I described would lead to other economic consequences, which I began to consider and to spell out. Point is, as Christians, our heart is these poor people. What they're living in a terrible situation. Let's bring them in. That's the heart question. The follow-up is, and then what? The point being, the follow-up question, and then what, should always be asked. Because, yes, should we bring everyone? Yes. And then what? Well, now we have billions more people. And then what? Well, our economy suffers. And then what? You keep on going down that rabbit trail. And then you see that logically, if we made our decisions solely with our heart, we would be in a lot of trouble. So I think it's really important to have that balance of heart and mind in those discussions.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess the last thing I wanted to mention is maybe have a deeper question about that. As Christians, what responsibility do we have to address the root cause of these illegal immigration, the poverty and violence in other countries, rather than just the symptoms that we see at the border? As Christians, what should we do?
Well, I think as Christians, we need to focus in-house first, put our house in order, meaning our country. We have veterans that are homeless. We have a VA system that needs help. It needs work. And so we want to be the Messiah of the world. And yet within our own borders, our own people are suffering, and they don't have to be.
I totally agree with that, but we also have Christian missionaries that go to other countries. So they must share the heart of someone in need and seeing that there's a lot of pain in the world.
But as a policy, as a country's policy, let's get our house in order, and then we can better serve those who need help.
So you're speaking in terms of our country needs, not as a Christian voice, but as a citizen of the United States.
Well, as a Christian citizen of the United States.
So you're saying as a Christian citizen of the United States, we should ignore people in other countries that are in pain and suffering.
Did I say that ignore? No.
I'm asking.
I said that we have to first get our house in order, and then we can go venture off and see what and who needs our immediate attention, and then prioritize those things as the powers that be see fit.
Okay.
So not ignoring, but prioritizing.
It's a hot button issue in the Christian circles. And I think all of us stand with the fact that illegal immigration is wrong, especially when most of the people are immigrating or are fighting aged men and not many children, women. That obviously that doesn't bode well for the country. At the same time, we have the heart of Jesus, and Jesus loves these people too that are coming over the border. There is a balance, and where that lies, that's for you to decide. On that note, have a great night.
Good night.
Good night.
Tune in next episode when you'll hear Dennis say,
I can't even understand what that means.
Hey, awesome listener. If you're enjoying our podcast, give us a little love, like, share, follow, and snag this episode for later. It's the easiest way to keep the good times rolling and make our day. You're the best. Thank you.